I'm very proud of
Yeah.
that ditch digger sort of mentality. I'm not afraid to get dirty with you. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations.
Shift happens, opportunities change, and success is a choice. So when shift happens, it is our choice. Either we let shift happen or we can make shift happen. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have all of you join us for this really cool and fun conversation that we're about to have. And joining me today in the Talking Shift studio, my man, Eric Levin, co-founder of Model Match. And we're going to get into what Model Match is, and we're going to get into Eric's story. But, you know, when you guys get to know Eric, and so many of you already do know Eric, but as others, you know, you get to know Eric's not just a co-founder of a SaaS platform. And by the way, does anyone know what SaaS stands for? Software as a solution. I actually never knew that. I just knew.
Really?
Well, I heard that a long time ago, but I forgot. So when you just told that to me, I'm like, oh yeah. So I've always I've been constantly thinking like, what was that? So,
That's
but
great.
not
I
only is
love that.
Eric a co-founder of Model Match, but he's also the co-founder co-founder of the Hickory Football Club, a semi-professional soccer team. Right back there, you see
Yeah, that's right.
the colors, hanging there. So many cool stories. So Eric, man, welcome. There it is. Hey, and by the way, why don't I have that hat? And you see that? Well, it might be backwards in the video. I don't know, but national champions, man.
Did you ever wonder, like, when you watch a national championship of any sporting event and it's over, and what happens when it's over? You know, balloons are
Like
coming.
I'm excited. Then go, "Ugh."
Well, okay, but on what you're watching on television, though, they're all celebrating, and these guys are putting on the hats and they're putting on the T-shirts, and it says national championship. Well, these are the things we don't really think about, Craig, when it comes to event management. Somebody had to design that shirt, design those hats, order a whole bunch of them, and keep them somewhere where you didn't jinx the whole thing because you haven't won the national championship yet, but have it ready for when that moment comes, if that moment comes, to then do that. So, funny story to get started, and then we'll get off this topic.
No,
But
it's all good.
we're in our second year as a club. It's for those that understand soccer/football in this, not American football, you know, the real international football. If you understand this country, we don't have promotion or relegation like you do overseas. And there's multiple, it's like a tiered platform. We're the foundation. We're the lower league is where we've started. And generally in your first year or two, you're lucky to win a couple of games and you're lucky to get 200 or 300 people to a game. Well, last year we averaged, 4,000 per game. Our biggest game attendance was 6,300. That was the Final Four game that we had at home. And then we traveled out to San Francisco to play the 900-pound gorilla, El Farolito. And El Farolito had not lost in over 2 years. National champs, undefeated, kill everybody. Nobody thought we had a chance. And we went out there and we won. That's awesome. Go check out Hickory FC on Facebook, Instagram. We got some really, really cool videos up there. They're a lot of fun. But without telling my business partners or anybody else, I ordered those hats, I ordered T-shirts, and I had them in a box in my rented SUV way up in the parking lot. So we win the national championship, and dude, I'm losing it. We're all losing it.
I can't even imagine.
We are just freaking losing it. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh man, I got these hats and T-shirts, but they're like a quarter of a mile away, way up in the parking lot. So I go running with a couple of buddies of mine, bring these boxes down, and a mortgage banker that we both now know, Abdel with PRMG, said, "Hey, I finally saw you on television," because he was watching the stream. He said, "You were the dude handing out the hats." Anyway,
awesome.
I didn't tell anyone, Craig, though. My wife didn't even know. So when I went to the hotel and they had this box waiting for me, she said, "What's in the box?" And I was like, "I can't tell you," because I was afraid I would jinx it. I didn't want anybody to know what was in that box.
And it's true, right? When you're saying that, I'm like, that's right. Like as soon as the winner, like those hats are right on there,
That's
man.
right.
And yeah. And then what happens if you don't win? You're like, oh, it's got to be the worst feeling to grab that box and just.
So I had a plan. You want to know what the plan was?
Did it involve a bonfire?
Well, sort of. This would have been a little funny, though, if all of a sudden down the road you see pictures of this. I was going to immediately ship that box to an overseas nonprofit that provides clothing for, communities in parts of the world where they need clothing. I was just going to ship it directly to them. And in my brain, I was like, I'll end up with some buddy that goes and does a nonprofit support trip to some community, who knows where, and they see Hickory FC national championship t-shirts, yet we never won. But luckily, Craig, I didn't have that problem. I'm happy to donate in other ways.
That's right. That's right. Quick funny side note, when I was in college in fraternity, homeless guy broke into one of my buddy's cars, he had a bunch of clothes in the back, right? Stole all his clothes. We're driving down the street and we see this homeless guy wearing our fraternity shirt.
That's so
He
good.
stole out my buddy's car.
What'd he do? Did he get out and do something, or he's like,
Yeah,
just
dude,
let
he's
it
like,
go?
dude, keep the shirt, man.
Yeah.
So you said, so the football club started 2 years ago? Did I catch that?
Yeah, we won the national championship in our second season.
Okay, can we just hold on to that for a second? You launched a football club 2 years ago, national champions. And what got you into, like, how did you start a football club? I mean, if I wanted to start a semi-professional, team of some, like, how do you just do that?
I think it's like anything else. Even if you had the idea, you need other people to help you
Mhm,
execute and implement
mhm.
and all that. And I did not have the ideas. A gentleman named Tom Dealey, who is in our industry, he runs business development for Top Flight out of Michigan. Tom worked for me several years ago. His introduction to this industry was he came to work for Model Match, worked for us for a few years, was fantastic, became a great value add for Model Match, and also a friend. Tom is a young guy. He was straight out of playing for a school called 𝐒𝐴𝐵 in the mountains of North Carolina. He was an All-American in soccer. He's from Oxford, England. He could have gone back overseas and played professionally. He played semi-professionally here, so he had that experience. But he was good enough to where he could have gone over to Europe and actually been a pro. But as is the case many times, he met a girl,
Yeah.
and that girl was from the United States and not far from Hickory, North Carolina. And so he wanted to settle here. And that's why he came to work for Model Match. But I had said to him at one point, you've got your work and your passion. And there's things that I don't love that word passion, but I definitely believe that there are things that make us better as husbands, as fathers, as business owners, as forget business owners, just what you do for a living, how you serve your customers. And those things are maybe the things that those customers never see. It might be that you meditate. It might be that you cold plunge. It might be that you go for hikes, or you bike ride. It might be that you're heavily involved in nonprofits and supporting, other causes, or it could be all of the above. Well, for him, I felt like he needed to stay close to the sport. And one day he came to me and just said, "Do you think a semi-pro team could work in Hickory?" And he had the experience from Asheville City, just down, hour and a half away from us. And we started talking about it, and without getting into crazy detail, that turned into Hickory FC. We went through the process of creating the business, getting the initial funding, going through the approvals with the league, going through the approvals with local facilities, which we got really lucky on. We've got an amazing facility that we were able to lease and where we play. And then we brought in a few other partners as well to help capitalize the business a little bit more, and also bring in expertise in other places. One of my partners is an attorney, and that's wildly valuable for a lot of what we do. Another one of my partners is former high level in the government. So he's got a lot of experiences with security and safety and municipality communication, and all that was important to me, because I didn't just want to be this little hobby. Like, if we're going to do this, let's actually have connections where we can get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people to a game. Who knew in a town of 40,000 that we'd end up with over 10% of the population at a game?
That is, dude, and by the way, that's really cool because I mean, this obviously transcends far beyond just,
Yes, it does.
and something that you said that I think is really like passion, right? And I agree with you. That's a funny word, but I think it's sort of like care about something, but care about something that fills your energy in your bucket, whatever that is, right? Because we have to have that release. We got to be able to channel that energy into something. And one thing, and as you know, especially being in the mortgage business, but I mean any business, this business can be so manufacturing oriented. It can be so linear. It's so important to have a creative outlet. I mean, for me early on, I mean, it was photography. I was really into photography simply because I had to have a creative outlet. And then obviously that, has moved into other things and whatnot. But I didn't start a semi-pro soccer team.
Well, we all do something. I mean, I was thinking about this when you and I were spending some time together at Sales Mastery just in the last week or so. and listening to some of the other speakers and interacting. And, I don't use the word fellowshipping very much, but I think I'm going to
Mm.
start doing that a little bit more, because fellowshipping has a different feel than, a meeting or something where there's this off ramp to money, if you know what I mean. But having that opportunity to spend time with people and learning about their story and how they got into the business and what's working and what's not working, but learning about their family, learning about what they do when they're not writing loans. And it made me think, something that I think this industry doesn't do a good job of. And most originators, it would be the one minor tweak that could have a huge multiple. And that is, are you really a wealth consultant for this person that is buying a home, that's purchasing an asset? Or are you a loan originator? Like, I don't like this word loan originator. I don't like the word loan officer. I think we should come up with something a little bit different, because there are those in this business that are truly wealth managers for the people that are buying homes. They're the ones not just saying, let's run the numbers and see what you can afford and what you can get pre-qualified for. They're going to ask questions like, "Hey, Craig, I know you got 2 young kids. Have you started saving for college? Do you have an IRA, or, are you invested in something to help support retirement? Tell me about 10 years from now. The kids are going to be 16 and 14. Or do you think you're going to have more kids? Well, let's think about, are you going to need more house 10 years down the road?" And for that person to be able to show me that not only am I going to get to purchase this asset where I'm going to have memories and love and emotion, but I'm also going to be able to use it as a tool to be able to drive what happens 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. I think that's something this industry is lacking in a really, really big way. And here's the reason why I bring that up. Hickory FC has reminded me that there's a different way to build relationships with people that actually then lead to some of the best business relationships you'll ever had. Look, man, you're an example of that for me. Ken Perry's an example of that for me. A lot of the people I spent time with in Sales Mastery are examples of that for me. Like, I truly have, like, a friendship with you guys, but I also know that friendship then leads to conversations that would be different if we were just engaging in a transaction, and that can support business down the road. So anyway, I just vomited a whole bunch of stuff, but there are a lot of dots to connect when it comes to, how you're leveraging things outside of business that also make you better at however you generate income.
Well, it also makes it more enjoyable. And
Good. Yes. Thank you.
I mean, I love how you teed that up, because fellowship is a big word, and that's not a word that's kind of used often. And certainly, coming back from Sales Mastery in Dallas as we were all hanging out, I genuinely was like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss my boys."
Right.
Like, we were texting you, me, and Ken, and whatnot. Let's get a mastermind group together and go to, one of your football games, right? Like, I got really excited about that. In fact, we're gonna do that. We're
Let's
gonna talk
go.
further offline, but I got excited not so much about doing a mastermind. I got excited just about, hey, we get to hang out again. And that's what makes this, because, when we say business is not personal, that's not true. Business is personal. And I think that's what's so powerful about our business. And you did say a lot of really great things. And I kind of almost want to touch on a few of these, because number one, yes, please, can we get rid of the name loan officer? Unfortunately, it's become ubiquitous with what people do. But by definition of loan officer, I believe that takes us down a transactional pathway. And to your point, we think relationally, but we act transactionally.
Mm.
And for so long, it's not necessarily a new conversation, but I would love it if, let it be said, shall it be written? Let's mark this moment. Like, can we change that path? And one thing that we were trying to go down a road of before was, if we really think about what the originator does, let's say the originator has the liability side of the balance sheet, whereas a financial planner has the asset side of the balance sheet. So if we're thinking about smart debt, instruments to create wealth through equity, working together with asset-based financial planners and whatnot, all of a sudden, we could think along the lines of like a liability manager, or, like you said, like a wealth creator. I mean, we can talk about, names all day long, but from a mindset perspective, it's so important, because if we look through that lens, now we're asking questions, not making statements. And with my clients, literally in the last couple of days, it's so funny you're saying this. I've had multiple clients where the action item, as we're digging into their consultation process, is I want you to have a bag of questions in your back pocket. So when you are in that journey of working with a client, you're asking that question. Hey, what is your goal for this mortgage? What does this home mean to you? And to your point, I see you have two young kids. Have you started saving for college? Did you know there's other ways to create wealth for college, even with your equity? I mean, there's obviously lots of, paths to go down. So I love how you frame that. And I want to come back to this fellowship because I really think with how difficult and challenging and up and down and whether it's being a co-founder of a SaaS company, a co-founder of a football club, in or on the mortgage business, there is no flat line, man. We are up, we are down, we're reacting, we're acting, we're catching up, we're trying to be proactive, and then curveball, And so, I mean, how do you balance it all? I mean, what is that through line for you?
Well, I'm still figuring it out. Let's just be
Sure.
real honest. And I think anybody that says that they know exactly what it is, just give it 6 months and they'll probably have to change that again. I think that I've learned the value of flexibility, right? And the value of consults from other people and asking them how they're dealing with something maybe in the short term that can help a little bit. I had the opportunity to speak at Sales Mastery, which maybe we come back to at some point as we're talking, but you were making me think, I was what I spoke about was introducing the author of a book called Inner Excellence, which is a really solid book I recommend. In it, he talks about ego versus mastery, and mastery being process oriented, ego being outcome oriented. Well, we could think about that with what you just said about the motivation of the originator or even a mortgage company for that matter. And that is sort of ego versus equity, because you just used the word equity. And equity refers to something bigger. It refers to something that has tentacles and is connected to many things and grows, slowly over time, certainly with ups and downs, but it grows slowly over time. Ego is our drive towards the quick hit. It's the dopamine hit. It's that thing that's going to make me feel good right now. And sometimes those things that make me feel good right now don't even relate to an actual positive business transaction. But it's almost worse when it does, because then you think that you did something that's sustainable and might have multiples when in fact it doesn't. Your ego drove you to something very quick, very short term. You feel good about it. Your emotion feels good. Your dopamine gets a little bit of a shot. And then what do? It's like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And that'll make you gray, and that'll give you wrinkles more than what I've got. And it'll make you come home in a bad way, too. And so I think of this ego versus equity thing that you just talked about. Um, and I think that's a hard thing to break, especially when, we happen to be in an industry. Let's just be honest, man. We happen to be in an industry where you can be below average as an originator and make $125,000 a year. Like, let's just think about that for a second. I've always been a believer that if you look at core competencies of matching an individual with an opportunity, and that's partly where the term model matching came from. But when you think about matching that, one of the core competencies is culture. And I used to put compensation in the culture bucket.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
if you ask me why, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying this is what we did and we were consistent with it, and I still am to this day. It's because compensation is directly tied to motivation, and motivation is directly tied to culture. Okay. So if you're in an industry where slightly below average can create the motivation towards that relative compensation, I mean, it kind of starts to break everything a little bit. And look, I'm not suggesting that LOs should make less money. That is not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that the path to the closings that then relate to the compensation is somewhat broken from a sustainability perspective. And I do have a vision for where I think this industry is going and how it's going to then change from a compensation perspective. And maybe that also then changes and adjusts motivation. But you're kidding yourself if you don't think that ego is part of how you're driving that path towards closings, which equals compensation. If you're driven a little bit more by equity or mastery, Well, then all of a sudden you're playing with the big boys now or the big girls.
Dude, okay, so I wanna connect a few dots there because I think what you're saying is really, like, big, right? And, first of all, the dopamine hit, right? We're chasing that dopamine hit. We want that. We feel good. Our brain goes towards that. It taps into our reward center. Obviously, now and that does create that rinse and the repeat. And that dopamine creates gratification. Now, in the equity category in mastery, right? And so, if we have ego creating dopamine and creating gratification, and this is short term and we want to chase it, then on the other side of that, to your point, we have mastery, and building equity creates mastery, let's say. Now, mastery creates gratification, but it creates delayed gratification. And I've
Yes.
always thought and said delayed gratification is one of those, if you can master having delayed gratification, that is one of those pathways to create success because we're creating long term success, right? And then we're building equity. And then for everybody listening, right? Equity is not just about your home. We're building equity with our clients. We're building equity into our career. We're building equity into ourselves. Equity is about investment. And maybe I would say dopamine hits or gratification can be about a cost. And so now if I tied that back to your compensation, and I agree with you, well, we always want to incent for the behaviors we want. Now, certainly there's limitations in the mortgage business because of compliance and complication and whatnot. But I agree, the model of compensation creates a certain behavior. But if we want long-term compensation, and that's what's hard about the mortgage business, because it is 30 days, month in, month out, month in, month out. It's hard to create a residual form of compensation and tie compensation into your book of business. And I'm talking to a couple of guys that are starting to kind of figure some of those models out. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I agree. Like, if we're thinking along the lines of I'm a liability advisor and I help you build wealth through real estate and I'm building equity with my clients and I can have delayed gratification. I don't mean delayed income, but it's not just about chasing the quick wins. It's about creating long-term success. And
Yeah,
that
you
backs up.
you made such a good point about equity in relationships also. I mean, I can tell you certainly instances, and they'll continue to happen because there are no summer breaks in software. You're never built. If anybody says that the tech is built, it ain't built. And Bowser, you should run for the hills if they say it's built. You're always building and it's always adjusting. But I could tell you stories, people that that are users of Model Match, enterprise clients, hundreds of people on the platform and someone at the top of the house that is managing that relationship. And I've been laid into by people at the top of the house. One guy, one well-known mortgage banker in particular, and if he listens to this, he's going to know who he is. He called me out in front of his whole company one day and said, "Why did you allow us to make that mistake? And
Interesting choice of language.
why did you allow me to make that mistake?" And I'll tell you what my mistake was, Craig. I knew they were making a mistake. I knew that they were managing their admin controls within the platform in a way that was going to create a problem. And I told them, "Hey, here's my opinion. I think this is going to be a problem." His point was in a very strange, not a strange way. I think it takes us a minute to breathe and think about it when someone's really getting on you. He said, "Why did you allow me to make that mistake?" What he could have said is, "The next time you have an opinion, tell me what to do because I trust you. I trust you've got my best interest in mind. And if you tell me what to do, I'm going to take that advice and do it." But that's not what you did. What you did was you half-assed it and you said, "My opinion is this, but let's go ahead and get it done," kind of thing. And I don't think that's what I was doing, but I do think in retrospect, I could have done a better job. Now, I only have the opportunity for him to, number one, say, "Why did you allow me to make that mistake?" And number two, renew, not kill the contract, not go to another company because I had equity in the relationship. I had earned it. I was not selling him numbers. I wasn't selling him data visualization. I was partnering with him on a solution, and the technology happens to be the conduit to that solution. So there was equity to the relationship, which also allowed me to not take it overly personal when he dressed me down in front of the entire company. Great. Let's solve it. And we did, and we moved on. But equity in relationships is a special thing, man, because there's going to be a moment where something goes wrong. And when that moment comes, they're either going to want to work with you to fix it, or they're going to find another solution.
Well, amen. And that space is only going to get more and more crowded in any form of SaaS or technology or AI or wherever, all of it. But I think for everybody listening to it, and Eric, this is one of your superpowers. I mean, you're saying it through this conversation, the fellowship, building equity. I mean, you can see the connection. And I want to add something else. And you said this on stage at Sales Mastery, if you remember saying it. And I'm just gonna say it and you can carry it forward and give meaning to it. You're a ditch digger. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Okay, so I'm becoming friendly with Heidi Iverson. I don't know if you know Heidi, but Heidi was head of business development for Guild. She was head of business development years ago for Castle and Cook. She's been in technology, and she has a consulting group practice now. And I found out that she is by education an organizational psychologist. So if I had Heidi sitting with me, she could be my therapist in this moment, or some other therapist, because I'm sure there's some therapy to unwind in this thing. I know that I am confident that if you and you have a shovel and I have a shovel, and you say, ready, go, I'm going to outdig you, or I'm going to die trying. It's just the way I'm wired. I also recognize, though, that I'm not the smartest person in the room. Like, there may be someone who gets deeper than me with ever actually hardly putting the shovel in the ground because they figured out a better way to dig a ditch, right? I used to think that being a glorified, here's where it came from. I wasn't a good student, and I was a good athlete. And my father, when I would come home with bad grades, would say, hey, it's okay, son. The world needs ditch diggers. And it was him beating me up. He felt like he could motivate me by sort of with negative motivation. Well, I took that into college and graduated. I got accepted into a master's program and dropped out because I didn't want to be in school anymore. I wanted to work. And I took that ditch digger mentality as a superpower.
Yeah.
What I learned over time is that if you put my ditch digger mentality together with some really smart people, you can accomplish some really, really awesome things. And so I've really flipped on that. I'm very proud of that ditch digger sort of mentality. I'm not afraid to get dirty with you. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations, but I also know that I need people with me on that path, within that process, to really accomplish big things. I can't do it on my, the shovel is a tool. I can't dig that ditch without the shovel. I could use my hands, but that would be a pretty foolish way to do it. And I'm not going to get deeper. The shovel is a tool, just like Model Match is a tool. And just like the people around me that bring expertise on things, they're tools also. They're in my tool belt with me. I had a meeting in Vegas at the NBA event recently with a really high level ICE executive. And, ICE is kind of the machine behind the veil that pulls all the levers in our industry, or a lot of them. And this guy is very well known. He can get in any room. And he made a comment to me that really stuck. And he said, I'm not an expert. I never call myself an expert. And if somebody calls me an expert, I correct them. What I'm good at is making sure that the room is an expert. And the people in there cumulatively can create that expert sort of title. So anyway, long-winded answer to the whole ditch digger comment that I made on stage.
No, but see, I mean, again, let's connect these dots, right? So for me, and one of my superpowers is taking the complicated out of the complex, right? It's helping synthesize and create simplicity when we're talking about big subjects. And, fellowship. Okay, so relationships are important. And beyond relationships, right? Friendships. And because we want to go, this stuff is hard, but when we can go through this with people we like, trust, and joy to be with, that creates that fellowship and that bond. And we're building equity in our relationships, equity within each other, and equity within our clients. You've earned trust. So when you do get dressed down by an owner of a company in front of an audience, it's not about you personally, it's about the solution, right? And we can learn from that and we can own that. And as a ditch digger, what I used to say when I was, in leadership and executive leadership, nobody is above plunging the toilet.
Yeah. Yep.
And I would say that off the cuffs. I'd say that in every single time I interviewed someone and I was hiring, I always said that, because I also want to know that if I'm the boss and I'm the leader and I'm in that chair, first of all, there is no ivory tower and nobody's above plunging the toilet. You're going to see me in the office moving boxes of paper from the copier A to copier B. It doesn't matter. and it set a precedence. And as a ditch digger, right, you're in the grind. You're not afraid to get your sleeves rolled up, and you do that. I mean, in the software or in Model Match, I mean, you're the guy who's giving demos and you're doing the sales and you're talking and you are providing solutions. You're not just back. And by the way, you still have to run a company, right? So there's the internal and the external. And I think it really does set a precedent. I mean, so much of what we're talking about, from ego to mastery, gratification and dopamine to delayed gratification, equity, building long-term success. And I've seen you do that. And I think for you and I, where we've developed a really strong friendship is because we recognize that. We recognize that in each other. We value that. You and I have both been through the mud together. And, when you come out the other end of that, and by the way, there is no other end. You just maybe go from one mud track, to the other. There's respect, right? There's sort of like there's tenure in that, and so.
Well, the quick story from the football club that I really gave no thought. I spend all my time on Model Match, and then early mornings, late in the evenings, or on the weekends. And we have staff for Hickory FC. We funded it in a way because we all have full-time jobs, and I can't have that take away from what I need to do within Model Match. But there was in our first year we went 10-2 and we won the conference, which was insane. We lost in the national tournament in the Sweet 16, but that was a heck of a run for the first year. Well, we did an exit survey with the players and the coaching staff, and we just wanted to find out, what did they feel like went well, what didn't go well. We're trying to learn, like, how can we be better in year two? And there was a couple of comments in the survey where the players said how much they appreciated sometimes pregame. So call it, we play at 7:00, and the stadium, they get there to the stadium early. They do a pregame meal. They do a walkthrough. They do some warm-ups. So at 3:00, 4 hours before the game starts on a Saturday, they see me running around with boxes, and I have to change my shirt 3 times because I'm sweating through it. It's the middle of the summer. I'm sweating through everything, but I'm running around with boxes. I'm dragging things. I didn't know they were watching, but they were watching, and they see that the owner, maybe for some of them that is a little intimidating out of the gate. I don't know. I try to make it so it's not intimidating, but he's up there wearing a t-shirt, sweating his face off, dragging boxes around, and they became better players because of it. They felt stickier to the club, stickier to who we are as an organization and how we want to represent, and they played harder for you. So what you just said, nobody's below plunging a toilet. Man, I'm with you 100%. And the wild part for me is that that's actually the stuff, not plunging the toilet, maybe, Craig. Running around with boxes or taking a demo for one single user. I like it, and I think it makes me better. I can only scale it so much. There is a point at which it breaks, but from time to time, I don't know that I could ever get it. If all of a sudden this became super corporate and all I'm doing is pulling levers and managing things from behind a veil, I don't know, man. I'm sure I'd like that. I don't think I could do it.
Well, and look, that's leadership, right? And I think, and again, that sets a precedence. It's visible, it's optics, but you're not doing it for other people. You're doing it for yourself. And that's where it's authentic, right? That's the difference, right? That it's authentic. And champions are made when people aren't looking, that sort of thing. So
yeah. And there's no such thing as altruism. At least I don't think so, because I just, you get something out of it. When you do something for someone else, a nonprofit, you donate something, you put effort into something, man, I'm telling you that your gas tank just got filled up a little bit more.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I don't like the phrase "you give to get," because I don't give in order to get, but by giving, I get reward.
For sure.
So,
For sure.
So let's dig into Model Match. I mean, you and I have had this conversation a ton, and I maybe just want to kind of frame it, and I'm just gonna wind up the toy and let you go here. But you and I talk a lot about growth versus recruiting, and recruiting has been an ugly business inside the mortgage industry for a long time, and I get it, and I know why, and however, I'm such a big believer in growth, creating opportunity, attraction. And we have to have the data to create the insights because, and this is why I love, frankly, the name of your company, and I quote it often, because we want to grow, we want to model match what makes us successful. We want to model match so we can help others be successful in our world, right? We want to model match how we've helped other people be successful and find other people like that. But it can be an absolute virus if we're recruiting the wrong people and the motivations are off. And, there's all, I can go down, the rabbit hole here, but my point is, I think what you guys have created and what you guys have provided and what you continue to always, I think, be, and I'll quote Alex from Sales Mastery, being a learn it all. You're always learning and applying and thinking forward to be solutions in the growth space. So talk a little about your thoughts of growth versus recruiting and how Model Match is helping solve those problems.
Yeah, great question. And that could be a long topic. I'll be direct and brief. My partner, Drew Waterhouse, and I started a recruiting firm called Hammer House back during the crash, 2008. Stupidest time to start. Stupidest time or best time to start something like that.
I was there.
We that's right, buddy. And we talked about that a couple of weeks or so ago. But we both had experience doing what we were doing, and we decided, you know what, let the company he was with went bankrupt. The company I was with went bankrupt. And so I started my own thing. He started his own thing, and then we met in the middle. And it was a couple of years of not paying yourself, while you're building that business. And we were a recruiting firm. We helped companies grow retail, wholesale, correspondent, mostly sales, some non-sales, but we preferred to start with sales because it gave us the best vision into the overall value proposition and core competencies of the company. Because everything is, the closer you can get to the end user, the consumer, who's right there with the originator, that's where you learn operations, technology, geography, culture, leadership, all those things that make up an organization. Okay, so we're doing this, and we were providing our activities and our pipelines in Excel spreadsheets. Now, most other recruiting firms didn't provide anything because it's kind of nice. Don't show visibility. You never get to call me out. You never get to call me out on, how many calls am I making? How many conversations am I having? How many meetings are we setting? How many meetings are converting to a second meeting, and so on and so forth. But we built out this process that we called model matching. And part of model matching was the process of tracking a relationship the same way you track a loan traveling through the LOS. Mm-hmm. So a pre-qual is just, hey, I know something about someone, but I don't have a relationship with them and I've never spoken to them. Processing may be that we've spoken before, but there is no commitment to a next action. Meeting would be like underwriting. We've now committed to a compliant process and there's going to be a next action. Offer would be like clear to close. Hire would be like servicing, funding servicing, like that. So we built this process that made a lot of sense to our customers and they loved it. They loved getting these Excel spreadsheets showing this progression. But we still had a problem. And the problem were things like holding our clients accountable to what they had to do in the process. And if everything is static and it's not dynamic and you're constantly having to call people and remind them, well, that's not like an LOS. Because if you go into your LOS and you type a couple of keywords, show me the Davis file. Well, not only will I see the Davis file, but I can see where does it stand in process, who's accountable to the next action, and exactly what is the next action. Great. But on recruiting and relationship business development, there was nothing like that. So we built Model Match to solve that problem. The visibility, the collaboration, the activity, and the accountability to the activity, just like a loan traveling through the LOS. So we were solving a problem that we had. We weren't thinking, oh, let's come up with a cool widget that we can go sell to a bunch of people and then get a valuation, get a check, and then we'll just start recruiting again. That was never the plan. First, it was solving a problem that we had. Then it was solving a problem that we saw that the industry had. So we went full steam 2000 build of the software to then get away from what we were doing on the services side and focus solely on the software. We rolled it out. We got great feedback, but there was something about a year and a half into it that started coming up. And so call it 2019, beginning of 2020. And that is, I love it. It's holding me accountable. My conversion rates are going up. I'm more efficient with who I work with in this process, which is buying me more time, all the things that we were looking to solve for, but I don't know who to call. Okay. Now, as someone who would consult or coach people on that, my first reaction was, what do you mean you don't know who to call? Like, are you not paying attention to things in your local marketplace that will allow you to then generate 5 more names to plug into the software and start the problem of outreach? However, you learn very quickly that if you're building a SaaS platform, it's your job to solve that problem. not just tell them what to do that creates more work for them. So Craig, that's when we invested in all of the NMLS and the real estate data. But we also had a decision to make there. That's a little bit of a crowded space. There's a lot of places where you can just go get data, you can just go get numbers, data visualization. We could have partnered with one of those companies a whole lot less. Like, it would have been a whole lot cheaper to do it that way. But we decided that if we're going to go down this path, we're going to go big and we're going to be the best, period. Like that is always going to be our goal and our focus and kind of that North Star, right? So we invested in it. That Model Match then became a true top to bottom, full funnel business development platform. Forget recruiting, because now I'm going to show you how to do what? Use the technology to not just get a new agent or get a new loan officer or open a new branch or identify a new market because of numbers that are telling me I should grow there, and not just recruit, but to gain the outcome that you're always looking for, which is, and I'm going to steal your word, growth. It's growth. I just want one more unit a month. Mm-hmm. Or I just want 10 more units a month, or the company needs X amount of units per month. Well, you can get that by recruiting an LO. You can get that by recruiting a branch. You can get that by bringing on a new wholesale account executive. You can get that by acquisition. You can get that by a new agent. But you also should be able to use the data to just go identify a past property or a past transaction that also relates to the next loan. And all of that should exist within a singular ecosystem. And that's been what we've been focused on with Model Match.
No, I mean, no doubt. And I want to point out something, like, I think what has driven the success. And again, I'm going to come back to this entire conversation. You're a ditch digger. You built this by solving a problem for yourself. And I recognize that because I think part of what fueled my success throughout my career was I created visibility for myself by saying, hey, I recognize a problem that is affecting me. I will solve the problem. I will quarterback the solution to this problem. I just need resources, maybe a little bit of money, some support, but I will go ahead and quarterback the solution to this problem because it's going to be good for me. And if it's good for me, it's going to be good for others. And that's what I hear you doing. You created a product that was good for you. And if it's good for you, it's going to be good for your client. And then all of a sudden, wait a second, because you're right. And I'm one of those guys throughout the tenure of this business, and recruiting has always been, such a hyper focus, in the growth models, which really did not exist until post 2008, right? I always grew just because I didn't know anything other than just to go grow. And then it became this big thing. And I lived in my spreadsheets, and I was on the internet, and I'm like websites and looking at people, and I know people and who knows who, and all these strategies to keep reaching out. But all of a sudden, what you've created now is a pipeline. You've created optics. You've created insights. You've created the data I need at my fingertips. And you helped me like a month ago. I needed a certain report of all certain types of originators in a geographic area. And I said, Craig, here, let me show you. And I was able to pull all that data in 30 seconds easily with the right insights and the right usability to now I can go apply that data. Because again, data is meaningless unless I have insight with that data. Now I know how to draw it to action. And I think that's what, the brilliance of what you guys have built with Model Match is you're connecting all those dots. So I don't have to go outside the ecosystem to find that one thing I'm missing. Right.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And we're not going to stop. Like, there's still more dots to connect. Yeah, I love that you use the word insights. I'm a big believer that there is no such thing as a cold call anymore. It just isn't. I remember when I made cold calls when I first started in this business. That's a cold call. All I have is your name, and I might not even have the right number. I got to get through a gatekeeper who might eventually somehow make a mistake and allow me to get through your direct line, and then I have to have a conversation with you. And in the first 30 seconds of that conversation, I might only know your title in the market that you're in. I don't know anything else. I don't know who you're. By the way, I remember recruiting even CFOs back in the day, and it's the same sort of thing. I don't have their resume on file. They're not on monster.com or Indeed back then. Those are cold calls. A cold call now needs to be redefined, because when I pick up the phone, I can call Craig and I can engage with you literally about a property transaction that I could see in your statistics. Or I noticed that your FHA volume has dropped by about 25% or so, but it looks like you're still working with agents that are doing a lot of Govy business. Is that by design? Is there a reason for that? And you engage with this person a little bit differently all of a sudden. I was at NAMM in Vegas before the NBA, and a local broker came up to me that uses Model Match and said, they asked me the question. They said, tell me how I can use your Borrower Insights tool. Now, our Borrower Insights tool is showing you any property, any transaction, anywhere in the United States, filtered by just about anything. So if all you want to do is like rebuild your database, sure, do that. But that's small potatoes. To me, that's really small thinking. What about capturing opportunities from your past transactions that you might not even know are sitting right there with a bunch of equity ready to do a new kitchen or a new bathroom or
You
something?
mean building equity with your clients to draw out business opportunities and creating customers for life?
Right? Here we come, full circle. So they said, show me how I can use Borrower Insights to help move the needle with a recruit. So I love this question, because what this person was saying was, I'm not just using Borrower Insights to go get the next refi deal or to go search for somebody that just crossed over 20% equity and I can get them to drop PMI now, right? Which, by the way, all great use cases. Like, tons of people are using Model Match to go get a new loan because of these insights and the data that they can enrich: AVM, calculated rate, payoff, equity, borrower contact information, all of it. But this person said, how do I use it to help me move the needle with a recruit? And I was like, oh boy, I got one for you. You ready? And I said, give me the NMLS ID. So we went into her laptop. She pulled up the NMLS ID and we went and searched by rate, by equity. We wanted to make sure they were still in the home, that they hadn't refinanced yet. And we enriched some of those columns so she could see the rate, the payoff amount. And she saw 2 or 3. Like, whoa, those are ready to drop PMI, or they're ready for a refinance. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to enrich those couple of properties, just like 2 of them, and you're going to print it off and you're going to bring it to your next meeting with that recruit. And while you're talking about your efficiencies in operations, your leadership skills, your ability to get them into agencies that maybe they can't get into today, whatever it is you're selling about your company and what your differentiators are, at the end of the meeting, give them that piece of paper. And they're going to look at it and they're going to say, what the heck is this?
Like, I see you.
And I know those borrowers. Well, yeah, you do, because you did the original transaction. But what I just gave you was the statistics, the insights, so that you can go create value for them and go get another loan on me. But there's a caveat. You ready? Here's the caveat. I'm going to give you a week. And if you haven't made those phone calls, I'm going to make those phone calls. But here's the thing. You come work with me, you get technology like this that helps you grow your business, but you get leadership that will work with you inside of the technology to help you create multiples.
Dude. Okay. So I'm going to recap a few things, really more in the form of words, right? You're talking fellowship. You're talking building equity. We've talked about being ditch diggers. You're talking about enrichment. Another really powerful word, enriching that relationship, enriching the opportunity because of the data and the insights that you're providing. And then let's throw another word in there. Now, pulling this all together, you're also creating accountability, right? And so if I am leading a team and I'm creating growth, whatever that capacity is, be it a branch manager, a production leader, a CEO, an owner, a loan officer, you create accountability not only for yourself, but those you work with. And that accountability can come simply in the form of optics, visibility, insights. And now we can't hide behind, I don't know. We do know. And now we can draw that towards action. And as a leader, not a boss, but as a leader, and like you said, look, if you haven't done it in a week, hey, no, I'll go ahead and take that forward. Now, we don't have to do it like that. Instead, let's obviously get behind, train, support, coach, and create the accountability around the action. So that week happens in like an hour, right? As soon as I get that insight, I'm now excited, right? I'm excited to draw that towards action. I now have less fear because I have less uncertainty of what I'm getting myself into. I have enriched data. I have those insights. I have those optics. And that can naturally draw those actions forward without being told what to do, but in the progression of success, right? Going back to building equity in our relationships and the successful outcomes that we're desiring.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, and all along the way, I would encourage like anyone that even when things are going really great with a relationship, a borrower, an agent, a software customer, I mean, whatever, even when they're going great, look for friction.
Yeah.
But look for friction differently than maybe you're thinking about friction. We try to I don't want friction. If I have friction, that means there's a problem. Well, let me give you a
Could be
little,
an opportunity.
Exactly, Craig. So, and here's the thing, there's always a little bit of friction. You just might not know that it exists. So about a year ago, I was talking to someone after I came off stage speaking at an event, and they said, I love Model Match. And let me tell you why I love it. And they said, I'm going into my past transactions and I'm exporting all of those transactions because we allow for export functionality. I export all those transactions and I'm taking those transactions and I'm sending them to 3 different places to get calculated rate, to get updated borrower contact information, to get payoff, equity, AVM. And then I come back into Model Match and I manage those opportunities forward. And man, I'm getting new loans because of it. So thank you so much, Model Match. Remember, this is like 18 months ago. This is a while ago. Thank you, Model Match, for providing the transaction details, not just to help somebody build their but to constantly take. By the way, stop using database. It should be called pipelines. 2 different things. We both understand the difference. But to help me take advantage of my pipeline. Well, here I am having a great conversation, Craig. Let's just take the positive and drop the mic and walk on. But you know what I heard? I heard they're exporting to then go solution these other problems. Well, hold on a second. Why can't I just solution that for you inside of the app so you never have to leave it? And so what did we do? I immediately got on the phone with the dev team. I was like, hold on a second. We need to find a solution so that on these columns that they don't have to go outside of Model Match to enrich that information. And that was where Borrower Insights was born. It was out of me recognizing friction that the person I was talking to didn't even know was friction.
100%. I mean, and you heard me on stage when I was presenting, when I was, the obstacle is the way. Well, the obstacle identifies the way, right? That little moment of friction, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And having that mindset, and I think that what I recognize is that has always been how you've led your career. That's how you've built the software. That's how you've identified the opportunities for yourself, creating the soccer club. And I think that right there sums up your success and your ability to get in it, not avoid it. But let's go forward, man. Let's jump into it. I recognize that, and I'm going to help solve that.
The only time I avoid it, as we're probably starting to wrap this up a little bit, but and I'm good on time, but I want to be sensitive. Is when I go home and my wife asks for help around the house. At that point, I'm not solving anything. I'm just going to do what I'm told.
Well,
you want me hang that picture right there? I think we're hanging it the wrong way. It doesn't matter. I'm hanging it exactly the way you want me to hang it.
It's it's decision fatigue, right? It's like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Like, I don't know. I can't make one more decision today. I now have,
maybe, or it's fear. It's like, I love you, mama, and I just want you to be happy. So you tell me what to do.
I love it, man. Well, dude, this has been a great conversation, for sure, to be continued. And I hope everybody listening, there's so many powerful nuggets. Just pay attention to Eric, pay attention to his social media, pay attention to Model Match. And, you're going to learn so much just by being in this man's atmosphere. So, dude, I love you, brother, man. I love this conversation, and I look forward to so many more.
Hey, I love you too. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep us straight.
I love it. All right, everybody, see ya, and appreciate you guys joining us as we were just talking a little shift. Hey, thanks for joining me today on Talking Shift. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on our next episode.